You want to know the scariest thing about a lie? It isn't the moment you tell it. It isn't even the moment you get caught. It is the moment you build your entire financial future on it. Sign the contracts, spend the money, and then realize the math does not add up. That is exactly where the WNBA finds itself right now. For the last 2 months, we've been force-fed a very specific diet of headlines. You've seen them, I've seen them. Every major sports outlet, from ESPN to The Athletic, has been running the same victory lap. They told us the 2024 WNBA Finals were a historic, record-breaking success. They told us the league had finally arrived. They told us that the Caitlin Clark effect had successfully transferred over to the rest of the league, and that even without the Indiana Fever in the playoffs, the WNBA was standing on its own 2 feet as a ratings juggernaut. But here's the problem. When you actually pull the raw Nielsen data, not the press releases, not the tweets from the league office, but the actual minute-by-minute viewership numbers, you see a completely different story. And it isn't just a little discrepancy. It is a discrepancy worth $2.2 billion. We are going to look at the numbers they tried to bury. We are going to look at the specific drop-off that happened the second Caitlin Clark walked off the court in Connecticut. And most importantly, we're going to talk about why they're lying. This isn't just about ego, it's about survival. Because right now, the WNBA is in the middle of selling expansion teams for hundreds of millions of dollars. And they're negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement that could bankrupt the league if their revenue projections are wrong. They're selling a mansion, but when you look at the foundation, it is made of sand, and the tide is coming in. Let's go back to the moment the lie started. It was right after the New York Liberty beat the Minnesota Lynx in Game 5. The confetti is falling, Breanna Stewart is crying, and the press release goes out. The headline: WNBA Finals deliver most watched series in 25 years. On the surface, that's true. Game 5 drew 2.15 million viewers. That's a big number. It's a massive improvement over the year before, where the Aces and Liberty struggled to break 1 million. If you just read the headline, you would think the WNBA has fixed its decades-long viewership problem. But let's zoom in on that number. 2.15 million viewers for a Game 5, a winner-take-all game, overtime, 2 massive markets, the history of the league on the line. Now, let's compare that to a random Tuesday in the regular season when Caitlin Clark was playing. Caitlin Clark's regular season games averaged over 1.1 million viewers. Her playoff debut shattered records. But here's the smoking gun that nobody at the league office wants to talk about. The first round of the playoffs, the round where Caitlin Clark got swept, had games that outdrew the WNBA Finals. Think about what that means for a second. The most important, highest stakes, most heavily marketed product the WNBA has, the Finals, could barely keep pace with a rookie first-round exit. When you look at the games in the Finals that didn't go to overtime, the numbers plummet. Game 1, 1.1 million. Game 2, 1.3 million. These are numbers that, yes, are up from last year, but they are down nearly 50% from the peaks we saw just weeks earlier when the Fever were on TV. The lie isn't that the ratings aren't up. The lie is the source of the ratings. The WNBA is telling sponsors, look, our popularity is surging. But the data says, no, Caitlin Clark's popularity is surging, and you are just catching the crumbs that fall off her table. Why does this distinction matter? Why am I calling it a scandal? Because of what the WNBA is doing with this data. Right now, the league is expanding. They just sold an expansion slot to Golden State. They're selling slots to Toronto, to Portland. The price tag for these slots has skyrocketed. We're talking about expansion fees hitting $200 million plus. Those investors are writing those checks because they're looking at a spreadsheet that shows a line going up and to the right. They see record ratings. They see growth. They think they're buying into a league that has doubled its audience permanently. But if that audience is actually just one player who might get injured, one player who might retire, one player who might eventually leave, then those investors are buying a bubble. They're buying Enron stock in the year 2000. And the WNBA knows this. That is why the narrative has been so aggressive. Have you noticed how the old guard of the WNBA, the players like Breanna Stewart, A'ja Wilson, Diana Taurasi, have been pushed so hard by the league's marketing machine during these finals? They're desperate to prove that the product is viable without the rookie class. You saw it in the media coverage. Every time ratings were mentioned, the analysts would quickly pivot to talking about the depth of the league. They would say, "See, people are staying for the basketball." But the minute-by-minute charts tell on them. In the playoffs, during the Fever games, retention was incredible. People tuned in and they stayed. In the finals, we saw massive fluctuations. People tuned in for the close finish, but they didn't watch the whole game. That is not a loyal fan base. That is a casual audience stopping by to see what the noise is about. This brings us to the most dangerous part of the lie, the collective bargaining agreement. The players just opted out of the CBA. They want more money, a lot more money. And honestly, looking at the headline revenue numbers, you can't blame them. The league just signed a media rights deal worth over $2 billion over 11 years. That's massive. But that deal was signed with the expectation of the Caitlyn numbers being the new normal. The networks, ESPN, NBC, Amazon, they paid for the Caitlin Clark WNBA. They paid for 2 million viewers a night. If the non-Caitlin WNBA is actually a 1 million viewer league, or worse, an 800,000 viewer league, then that TV deal is overvalued. And if the TV deal is overvalued, the money the players are demanding simply isn't there. The players are looking at the same fake charts the investors are. They're saying the league is booming, pay us millions, but the owners know the truth. They know that without number 22, the math gets really scary really fast. This disconnect is going to cause a lockout, mark my words. The players believe the lie because the league has been selling it so hard. They believe they are the reason for the ratings. You have players on podcasts saying, "We built this league, people are watching for us." And when the owners come to the table and say, "Actually, we can't afford to pay you that much because our data shows 60% of our viewers only care about one person," the players are going to feel disrespected. They're going to feel cheated. It's a trap of the league's own making. By refusing to admit that the surge is specific to one superstar, they have convinced their own workforce that the entire business has changed overnight. Let's look at the history here, because the WNBA has done this before. Go back to 1997, the inaugural season. The hype was unbelievable. We got next. The commercials were everywhere. The ratings for the first few games were huge. NBC was treating it like the NBA Finals. But what happened? The novelty wore off, the media stopped covering it, and for 20 years, the ratings flatlined. The league survived only because the NBA wrote a check every year to cover the losses. They're terrified that history is repeating itself. They're terrified that the Caitlin Clark effect is just the 1997 launch all over again, a spike of interest that fades once the novelty is gone. That is why they're trying to lock in everything right now. Lock in the TV deal, lock in the expansion fees, lock in the long-term sponsors. They're trying to cash the check before the market realizes the account might be empty. There's a forensic clue in how the league handled the scheduling this year. Look at the playoff schedule. They put the Indiana Fever on at the most premium times possible. They moved mountains to get them on national TV. Why? Because they needed to juice the numbers for the quarterly reports. But when the Fever got eliminated, what happened? The scheduling got sloppy. We saw games competing directly with the NFL. We saw weird tip-off times. It was almost like the league resigned itself to the fact that without their golden goose, it didn't matter when they played the games. And let's talk about the expansion scam. I call it a scam because of the valuation jump. A year ago, you could have bought a WNBA team for pocket change compared to other sports. Now, the Golden State Valkyries are paying $50 million. But the teams coming after them, the price is rumored to be doubling, tripling. Portland, Toronto, these cities are bidding hundreds of millions of dollars. If you're the owner of the Toronto expansion team, you're doing the math based on selling out your arena every night. You're basing it on merchandise sales that match the Fever. But what if the Fever only come to town once a year? What if Caitlin Clark gets injured? Suddenly, your $300 million investment is relying on a league that historically loses $50 million a year. The WNBA is selling the future based on a sample size of one season, and not even a full season, a season where the main character played every minute. there's another layer to this lie, the respect angle. If the WNBA admits that the ratings are driven by Clark, they have to admit that their marketing strategy for the last decade was a failure. For years, they marketed the 3 Gs, the game, the gay community, and the grind. They marketed social justice. They marketed the lifestyle. And it didn't work. The ratings stayed low. Then a girl from Iowa comes along who just shoots threes from the logo. No political messaging, no complex narrative, just pure electric basketball. And the world tuned in. Admitting that Clark is the sole driver of this success is an admission that the identity politics era of the WNBA marketing failed to grow the game. And there are people in the league office who would rather lie about the numbers than admit they were wrong about the strategy. So they blend the numbers. They take the massive outlier of the Fever games and they average it into the league-wide stats. They say, league viewership is up 40%. That is like me and LeBron James walking into a bar and saying, on average, we have 2 NBA championships each. It is statistically true, but it is a lie in practice. The media plays along because they are terrified of the mob. If a reporter comes out and says, actually, nobody watched the Las Vegas Aces until they played Indiana, they get attacked. They get called misogynistic. They get accused of hating the league. So we get this emperor's new clothes situation. Everyone nods and says, yes, the league is thriving, the growth is organic, while privately the network executives are sweating bullets looking at the minute-by-minute drop-offs. I want to show you one specific piece of evidence from social media. It is a receipt that got deleted, but the internet remembers. During the finals, a prominent WNBA journalist posted a screenshot of the YouTube TV trending tab. The WNBA Finals game was trending below a random college football game between 2 unranked teams. The journalist deleted the tweet within an hour. Why? Because it broke the narrative. It showed that even at the absolute peak of the non-Clark WNBA, they were losing to meaningless college football. If the league was truly arrived, if the ratings were truly as robust as they claim, they would be beating mid-tier college football. They aren't. And here's the kicker. The fallout from this lie is going to hurt the players the most. The players are currently negotiating as if they have all the leverage. They are opting out of the CBA, demanding charter flights for everyone, higher salaries, revenue sharing. If the owners agree to this based on the fake numbers, and then the Clark bubble bursts or stabilizes, the league goes bankrupt. It is that simple. The WNBA does not have the cash reserves of the NBA. They cannot afford to overpay on a contract for 5 years if the revenue dips in year 2. If the owners don't agree and they show the players the real numbers to justify lowball offers, the players will revolt. They will say, "You are hiding the money. We saw the press release about the records." The lie has created a gap between expectation and reality that is impossible to bridge. So, what happens next? We're going to see a showdown. The TV networks are going to start demanding guarantees. They're going to want flex scheduling to ensure Caitlin Clark is on prime time every single week. The old guard players are going to get louder and angrier. They're already resentful. You see it in the hard fouls, the side eye in interviews. Now imagine when they find out that despite all the record ratings, their salaries aren't going up as much as they thought because the real revenue isn't there. The WNBA has spilled its own secrets. They tried to package a unicorn event, the arrival of a generational superstar, as a systemic success. They tried to take credit for lightning in a bottle. And now they have to pay the electric bill. This next 6 months are going to be critical. Watch the expansion announcements, watch the CBA leaks. If you start hearing rumors about stalled negotiations or financial concerns, remember this video. It means the receipts finally came out. It means the lie stopped working. Because you can fake a press release, you can fake a viral tweet, you can even fake a sellout crowd by giving away tickets, but you cannot fake the bank account. And right now, the WNBA is writing checks that only Caitlin Clark can cash. If you want to understand the deep, dark history of how the WNBA has manipulated its image for years and the specific locker room confidential stories they buried to protect the brand, you need to watch this video right here. We dive into the deleted files from the 2016 season that set the stage for everything happening today.